Welcome to the Tim Booker channel, where wisdom is worth spreading. Wishing you a delightful listening experience. Today, we're going to discuss a book about competition and winning. Competition inevitably leads to winners and losers, and everyone aspires to win. However, the pressure of competition often leaves us overly anxious, hindering us from performing at our best. If something isn't a competition, even if it's as thrilling as skydiving, after doing it 3 times, you gradually develop a sense of calm. But when something is a competition, even something like a dance competition, no matter how many times you've competed, you still feel the pressure. So why do humans have such a strong inclination for competition? Is it true that without pressure, there's no motivation? Why do some students who excel in regular coursework perform disastrously in crucial exams? Why is there a top girls' dorm, but not a top boys' dorm? Why are most politicians, both in the past and present, predominantly male? All these questions can be answered through today's book, Top Dog. We've chosen to share this book with you because it falls into the academic genre. When it comes to discussing competition and winning, we've all grown weary of popular success literature and motivational cliches. Instead, let's explore how the scientific community views this topic. This book will reveal that competition can sometimes ignite your potential and enhance your chances of winning. However, the relationship between competition and potential isn't linear, it follows a bell curve. In other words, beyond a certain threshold, increasing the intensity of competition can have counterproductive effects. For a modern individual, understanding the scientific perspective on competition provides the correct methodology for winning. In summary, Top Dog primarily presents 3 key points. 1. Competition is motivating when opponents are evenly matched. 2. Women tend to approach competition more rationally, while men often overestimate their competitive advantages. 3. Whether a person enjoys or avoids competition is a physiological matter related to the secretion levels of testosterone hormone. First, let's examine the first point. Competition is motivating when opponents are evenly matched. From childhood to adulthood, we are constantly engaged in various forms of competition, such as academic scores, job performance, and societal wealth. This competition often imposes significant stress upon us. However, we hold on to the belief that without pressure, there is no motivation. Indeed, when we look at highly successful individuals, they achieve remarkable feats while facing competition that surpasses ordinary imagination. It appears that the pressure brought by competition can inspire greater accomplishments. Hence, from a young age, we are placed in environments filled with competition. For instance, starting from kindergarten, teachers reward high-achieving students with gold stars, putting them on honor rolls. The underlying logic behind this is that praising outstanding students instills competition pressure among the entire class, motivating them to strive harder. You might even have experienced situations where teachers deliberately pair good students with struggling ones. One reason is for the top students to assist those who are struggling. The more crucial purpose, however, is to make struggling students feel the pressure of competition, thus sparking their learning potential and enthusiasm. This seems like common sense. However, since our book, The Psychology of Winning and Losing, claims to be about the science of winning and losing, it's essential to scientifically validate this seemingly reasonable notion. A few years ago, an American economist conducted a study on students at the United States Air Force Academy, a prestigious institution known for its high standards. This school was even featured in Forbes as one of the top 10 universities in the United States, with an admission rate of only 14%. The students admitted to this university were exceptionally qualified. However, among high-achieving students, competition was often fiercer, resulting in clear distinctions in performance. Once these students entered the school, they quickly separated into high achievers, average performers, and those with poor performance. Despite their initial selection for admission, many students couldn't cope with the competitive environment, leading to poor academic performance and difficulty finding proper employment. These were initially excellent students, so what caused them to perform so poorly? The economist conducting the research wanted to change the mindset of these struggling students. He had an idea, which, as you might have guessed, was similar to the concept of good students helping struggling students. However, instead of making them sit together, he placed struggling students and top students in the same class. As you may know, military academies differ significantly from regular universities in terms of their militarized management. Students at military academies eat, sleep, train, and study together, fostering constant interaction between struggling and top students. This was intended to provide struggling students with comprehensive stimulation. What were the results of this experiment? You can probably guess. The economist was astonished when he saw that the struggling student's performance actually declined. He couldn't understand why this happened, it didn't make sense. But the more embarrassing part came later. According to the school's regulations, after students reached their second year, they could choose roommates freely. These academically struggling students scattered and formed their own group, no longer living with the high-achieving students. This created a distinct divide, as the struggling students felt constant inferiority around their high-achieving peers. Competition seemed endless, and victory appeared unattainable. As a result, they formed a close-knit circle, seeking refuge and comfort among fellow low-performing students. This inadvertent sense of security gave them a reason not to strive for improvement. The professor's original goal was to help struggling students progress, but not only did their grades worsen, they also gave up on competition altogether. However, the professor was not one to give up easily. He thought there must be some mistake, so he continued the experiment. He repeated it with several batches of students, but the results were consistently the same. There was no choice but to accept the findings. This professor eventually published his research, even though it contradicted his initial hypothesis. Nevertheless, this professor, being a professor, noticed something quite intriguing. As mentioned earlier, he had placed both high-achieving and struggling students in the same class. But you should remember that a class has a maximum number of students. To accommodate as many struggling and high-achieving students as possible, the average performers had no place in these classes and had to form new groups. A year later, how did the performance of these average students fare? Most of them showed significant improvement in their grades. This, coupled with the fact that struggling students' performance deteriorated earlier, indicated that competition is motivating when opponents are evenly matched, while competition has no motivating effect when there is a significant gap in abilities. Of course, if this were just one experiment, it could be considered an isolated case. Scholars conducted other studies that confirmed this conclusion. In the book, The Psychology of Winning and Losing, it is noted that whether in the sales departments of American companies, among English strawberry pickers, or Dutch clothing store sales associates, when they competed with those of similar skill levels, productivity generally increased by 10% to 50%. However, when competing against opponents with significantly different skill levels, efficiency declined. This inspires the idea that for a collective to help more individuals succeed in competition, it should strive to create an environment where opponents are evenly matched. If achieving equilibrium is not feasible, then efforts should be made to make the gap in abilities less conspicuous. For example, a French bank once organized a 2-month-long competition among its loan sales teams. During the competition, they announced the best-performing branch of the day, the daily champion. Due to significant fluctuations in loan volume, daily performance often had many accidental factors. Consequently, many smaller branches achieved daily champion status. Even though these smaller branches had no chance of winning overall, the daily champion title provided them with a new reference point. This encouraged branch employees to work harder, resulting in a 28% increase in sales during the remainder of the competition. This was because the daily champion title dispersed everyone's attention, creating an illusion of evenly matched competition and making the gap in abilities less obvious. So, in summary, the first point is this: competition is motivating when opponents are evenly matched. Now let's discuss the second point: women tend to approach competition more rationally, while men often overestimate their competitive advantages. After hearing the previous point, you might be inclined to think that if you're not among the absolute top-performing students, you shouldn't aim for the most elite universities. You might believe that attending Peking University or Tsinghua University, where competition is intense, would be too stressful. Instead, you might consider enrolling in a university with average standards where you can compete on a more even footing, thus unlocking your potential more effectively. This reasoning may sound sensible, but The Psychology of Winning and Losing reminds us that we've overlooked gender differences. A professor at Northwestern University in the United States discovered that the validity of this reasoning depends on whether it applies to boys or girls. Girls and boys are different in this regard. The more prestigious the school, the more intense the competition, and girls tend to excel under these circumstances. However, the situation is entirely different for boys. They often struggle when faced with greater pressure. You might find this conclusion somewhat surprising, so let's examine the professor's research evidence. He studied 2 Caribbean nations, Trinidad and Tobago. The professor collected data on every child in these 2 countries in 2002. The results showed that the performance of boys and girls differed significantly after entering elite schools. For boys who entered the most elite schools, their math scores generally declined. Conversely, boys who attended slightly less prestigious schools tended to acquire more mathematical knowledge. On the other hand, girls performed better as they attended more prestigious schools. Is this true? Are boys less adaptable to the competitive environment of elite schools compared to girls? By our intuition, shouldn't boys be more competitive? Think back to a common scenario we often hear about, a dormitory of exceptional female students, where all 4 roommates have been admitted to prestigious graduate programs in finance at universities in the United States and the United Kingdom, or have gained admission to top domestic universities. It seems entirely normal that roommates motivate each other to excel. However, why don't we hear about a most outstanding male dormitory? This is because the most exceptional male students typically have little influence on their roommates. Some Chinese universities assign dormitories to new students without giving them a choice. How do the universities allocate dorms? They are unconcerned with academic performance. The sole criterion is to have students from diverse backgrounds, promoting a spirit of diversity in interaction. For researchers, this was essentially a natural random experiment. 2 researchers from Harvard and Peking University selected a renowned university in a coastal province of China and analyzed the high school entrance exam scores and post-university performance of 2,134 students. They sought to understand how roommates influenced their performance. The results revealed that female academic achievers were like beacons in their dormitories. If a female student entered the university with a relatively weak academic background but had roommates with strong academic records, her university performance would improve. She was likely motivated by her roommates and may have even received direct assistance from them. However, this effect did not occur in male dormitories. The best-performing male students often had no positive impact on the academic performance of their roommates. It's not that male top achievers suppressed their roommates, it's just that being roommates with high-achieving males was an unpleasant experience. The Psychology of Winning and Losing states that boys tend to be overly competitive. They constantly seek to outdo others and are overly confident. Before entering a top university, girls tend to make a more sober assessment. They understand that facing so many high-achieving students may not give them a competitive edge. Therefore, when they encounter difficulties in university, they seek help because they know they need it. Boys, on the other hand, never contemplate the possibility of losing. If they do lose, they are reluctant to seek help and may even refuse to acknowledge their loss. In extreme cases, they may give up entirely. So, in general, men tend to be impulsive. They don't consider the risk of failure before competing but are quick to give up when faced with setbacks. Women are better at evaluating the risks of competition rationally. They don't typically seek out competition, but once engaged, they often persevere even in the face of adversity. Considering all this, it seems that the male approach to competition might appear less intelligent. However, in the real world, beyond the realm of university entrance exams, there are many situations where excessive confidence and a willingness to take risks are indeed male advantages. For instance, why are most politicians male? It's not because voters discriminate by gender and prefer male candidates. In fact, based on statistical data, when female candidates run for office, their political fundraising and voter support are not lower than those of male candidates. The scarcity of female politicians results from the fact that women are less inclined to run for office. Women's reluctance to enter politics is due to their ability to rationally assess the likelihood of winning. A study surveyed legislators in various U.S. states and found that when male politicians believed they had less than a 20% chance of winning, most of them still chose to run. However, most female politicians felt this probability was too low to bother with, and they chose not to run. The consequence is that, in the end, only men are elected, and this is precisely because men overestimate themselves and embrace risk-taking. So, that concludes the second point: women tend to approach competition more rationally, while men often overestimate their competitive advantages. Now let's discuss the third point: whether or not a person enjoys competition is a physiological matter related to the level of testosterone secretion. In how individuals approach competition and winning or losing, attitudes vary greatly. Some people relish competition and want to challenge others, even in situations that aren't inherently competitive. On the other hand, some individuals have little interest in competition and might even prefer chatting with opponents during formal contests. Some people perform well under normal circumstances but crumble under pressure, while others excel above their usual level when faced with stress. What determines these differences in performance? Is it cultural tradition, family environment, recent mood, astrology, or palmistry? Surprisingly, the answer with the most scientific evidence is related to finger length, specifically the length of the ring finger relative to the index finger. Before we delve into finger length, let's first discuss the scientific research on competition from a physiological perspective. Physiologically, there's substantial evidence suggesting that a person's inclination toward competition and risk-taking is influenced by the level of testosterone secretion. Testosterone is a male hormone, but females also produce it, although in significantly smaller quantities than males. Testosterone can enhance physical performance and explosiveness, which is why men tend to outperform women in sports such as running and long jumping. Athletes often mention that their performance is affected when their testosterone levels are suboptimal. Recent studies have found that testosterone can also have a positive impact on competitions that don't rely on physical explosiveness, such as chess. Chess players who had higher testosterone levels before matches tended to perform better. Surgeons secrete more testosterone on days when they perform more complex surgeries. There's even evidence that using testosterone medications can directly enhance mathematical performance. In essence, testosterone can stimulate performance in any competitive endeavor, whether it involves physical or mental skills. It makes individuals more willing to take risks and invest themselves in competitions. It can also make individuals more selfless during contests, more concerned about their teammates, more likely to protest against opponents' fouls, and even encourage more rational thinking rather than impulsive reactions. If a person's testosterone levels are insufficient, they may struggle to reach an excited state necessary for peak performance. As you can see, testosterone is not just a male hormone, it's practically a competition hormone. Now, let's return to the discussion about women. Women have only about 1/7 of the baseline testosterone levels found in men. This lower baseline testosterone level affects women's propensity for risk-taking. Statistics reveal that among angel investors, 15% are women, but among venture capitalists, women account for less than 7%. Numerous studies have shown that female stock traders on Wall Street not only perform as well as male traders but may even outperform them. Despite this, the majority of stock traders are male. This could be attributed to the fact that women are disadvantaged by lower testosterone levels, making them less inclined toward competition and risk-taking. So, what about those adventurous women? What are their testosterone levels like? After all the build-up, we can finally talk about finger length. Can you tell a person's baseline testosterone level from their appearance? Surprisingly, you can, by examining the relative lengths of their ring finger and index finger. The longer the ring finger compared to the index finger, the higher the individual's baseline testosterone level tends to be. Why is this so? It's because during fetal development, a person's fingers are influenced by two hormones, testosterone and estrogen. The balance between these two hormones directly affects finger development. If testosterone levels are significantly higher than estrogen levels, the individual's ring finger will grow longer relative to the index finger. As we've discussed earlier, individuals with higher testosterone levels tend to be more inclined toward competition. So, does this mean that people with significantly longer ring fingers relative to their index fingers are more competitive? In 2011, two Italian economists conducted a study. They interviewed over 2,000 entrepreneurs who had started their businesses and took photographs of their right hands. Then, they used these photographs to measure the lengths of their ring and index fingers. The results showed that the more successful the entrepreneur, the longer their ring finger tended to be relative to their index finger. The most successful entrepreneurs had ring fingers that were 10% to 20% longer than their index fingers. What's even more interesting is that among these 2,000 entrepreneurs, there were 780 female entrepreneurs. Normally, males have slightly longer ring fingers than index fingers, while females have slightly shorter ring fingers. However, among these 780 Italian female entrepreneurs, their ring fingers were longer than their index fingers, and the difference was even more pronounced than among male entrepreneurs. Let's consider the achievements of these female entrepreneurs. They were more successful than their male counterparts, their companies were larger, they experienced faster growth, and they worked harder. So, in summary, if you want to gauge whether a person is suitable for competition, you can get a rough idea by examining the length of their ring finger. Furthermore, this study is not an isolated case, several similar studies not mentioned in this text can be found in the book's references. Successful individuals, whether high-level athletes or high-frequency traders on Wall Street, tend to have longer ring fingers. Let's take a look at another study conducted by Chinese researchers. For those familiar with Taiwan, it's known that the transition from junior high school to senior high school is a crucial step, akin in importance to mainland China's college entrance examination, Gaokao. Only students who pass this exam have the opportunity to attend prestigious universities, while those who don't usually end up in vocational or technical schools. Consequently, this exam is highly competitive, featuring challenging questions, and has a pass rate of only 39%. Students who undertake this exam face immense pressure, especially those who perform exceptionally well under normal circumstances but struggle during crucial exams. A team of researchers at National Taiwan Normal University discovered a gene called the COMP gene, which is related to competitiveness. However, this gene behaves differently in students who tend to perform abnormally under pressure compared to the general population. When the human brain operates at a high speed of excitement, it releases a substance called dopamine. Its role is to help transmit pulses between nerve cells. Dopamine is associated with various emotions and responses, such as excitement when winning in gambling, experiencing love at the sight of a beautiful person, responding to significant events with excitement, and feeling nervous under pressure. Having too little dopamine makes it difficult for a person to get excited, but an excessive amount can lead to overexcitement. So, what's the role of the COMP gene we mentioned earlier? It enables us to produce an enzyme responsible for clearing excess dopamine in the brain, preventing us from becoming overly excited. However, there are two types of this enzyme, a fast enzyme that rapidly clears dopamine and a slow enzyme that does so at a slower rate. Most people possess both types of enzymes, but some have only the fast enzyme, while others have only the slow enzyme. If your COMP gene produces the fast enzyme, you are more likely to maintain a calm state of mind when faced with pressure. This is not because of superior willpower on your part but because the surplus dopamine is swiftly removed, preventing overexcitement. On the other hand, if your COMP gene produces the slow enzyme, it cleans up dopamine more slowly. As a result, when you face pressure, there's an excess of dopamine, leading to panic. Students who struggle during critical exams often have a COMP gene that produces the slow enzyme, causing them to perform abnormally. Fortunately, the proportion of people with this characteristic in Asian countries is relatively low, at around 8%. However, individuals who produce the fast enzyme may be calm under pressure, but in their everyday lives, when stress is absent, dopamine is quickly cleared from their system, which can lead to a lack of motivation and excitement. In contrast, individuals who produce the slow enzyme may struggle under high-pressure situations, but because their dopamine levels remain relatively high most of the time, they often perform better than the average person. Research has found that they tend to have higher cognitive abilities and IQs on average. So, it turns out that success in competition isn't solely determined by an individual's innate abilities, physiological factors play a significant role. Does this mean that some people are naturally better at competition and are suited for competitive scenarios, while others are better off leading stable lives? Do individuals with shorter ring fingers have to remain inconspicuous in competitive settings? The good news is that the research on ring fingers isn't the whole story. Scientists later found that physiological factors can explain only 40% to 60% of an individual's competitiveness, while education and cultural traditions still have a crucial role to play. For example, most of Italy's female entrepreneurs are concentrated in the northeast because the cultural atmosphere there is more accepting of career-focused women. Here, even women with less exceptional natural talents can thrive. In southern Italy, however, the culture is less tolerant, and female entrepreneurs face considerable public scrutiny. Successful female entrepreneurs in this region often need to possess extraordinary qualities to succeed. In conclusion, the book, The Psychology of Winning and Losing, has enlightened us with three less commonly considered viewpoints. 1. Competing against evenly matched opponents can be motivating. 2. Women tend to be more rational in the face of competition, while men often overestimate their competitive advantages. 3. Whether a person enjoys competition is a physiological matter linked to testosterone levels. This book inspires us to understand where the limits of competition's motivational effects lie. Competition can indeed unlock our potential, but the relationship between competition and potential isn't linear, it's more like a quadratic curve. Beyond a certain threshold, increasing competition intensity can have a counterproductive effect. Congratulations, you've completed another book. Until next time. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share with your family and friends. Wisdom is worth spreading, paving the way for a brighter future. Thank you, and goodbye.